Hey everybody, it's the Nitty Professor, and today I want to explore the topic of recycled yarn. So a lot of you are probably way ahead of me on this issue, but I have a personal reason for exploring it, and that is that in my novel I have, as I'm just going to call it one of the ongoing characters, a yarn shop. So I have this yarn shop. I'm in volume 8 now, and it goes from a very modest store run by older women to this big, huge deal. And so the current person that I'm writing about now wants to really enhance the sustainability of the product profile that they carry. And so I need to really learn, if I'm going to write about that, I have to develop some chops to talk about it. So I thought specifically looking at and exploring recycled yarn would be useful. And it may be useful for you as well. So I was going through my collection a little bit. I do not have a lot of recycled yarn. I have a lot of thrifted yarn. In fact, the sweater that I'm wearing right now is made from thrifted yarn. Most of it I found from Goodwill, and some of it was leftover yarn that was given to me by a spinner friend, and she had already used what she was going to, and so I was able to integrate that into the yoke. And the green yarn here, this is the Reynolds version of the Lopi, and I got it for a song at Goodwill 6 or 7 years ago. Now this is a skein that I picked up. This is recycled silk from Saris. I got this at Stephen B. It says Tibet right on there. Himalaya yarn incorporated out of Vermont, and it is made in Nepal. So I'm guessing the Tibet is like the kind. It says it's 60% wool and 40% recycled silk. So there's some wool in here, but recycled silk as well. Yeah, Himalaya yarn. That's all I'm getting out of this. As you can see, I've balled it up, but I haven't made anything with this yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be kind of interesting and fun to see, the qualities and what it can make. Another reason why I was inspired to tackle this topic is because when I was going through the yarn that I bought in Copenhagen the other day, I recognized that this Gepard cashmere is eco cashmere, and according to the label, it is a mix of new cashmere fibers and recycled, unused 100% cashmere products from the Italian textile industry. Get a load of that. So, and I have some other show and tell, because this is a topic that I want, let me put this way, I want to get better. I want to improve. So this is fur from my son's husky. And he just went out this is felting, like literally husky fur can felt. Fascinating. Actually, you know what? This is cat fur. This is cat. This is from Gizmo. Darren, if you're watching this is from Gizmo. I'm gonna knit her fur, and this is husky. Okay. And I have some wool in here because a fiber expert from Colorado said you gotta combine it. You can't just do the husky fur. I mean, you could, right? People did, right? But it's better if you mix it with wool. So I'm like, okay, and I have some I think flea market type wool that I found. And here's another thing that I do. I don't throw any of my yarn scraps away. I collect them all. And as you can see, I also collect yarn labels. But I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with this. I did pose that as a question to some of my viewers a few months back, and they had some good ideas. Everything from stuffing to carding it and reusing it and integrating it. There are a lot of things I can do with it. So I am going to hang on to it and get inspired. But yeah, so I want my yarn shop to be a paragon, the one in my novel, of good practices. One where it's like open-minded. There's something for everyone. There's something for the acrylic lovers and something for the cashmere lovers and everything in between. But my yarn store manager is keen on sustainability. So let's kind of dig into that a little bit. How can recycled yarn enhance sustainability? So there are a lot of good ways that this can happen. It reduces textile waste, obviously. When you divert these scraps or, for example, unused skeins, the ones I found in Goodwill, post-consumer textiles, they're not going into the landfill, at least not yet. Hopefully never will. So we're giving materials a second life, reuse, recycle, lowering the environmental footprint, which is a good thing we want to do. reducing the use of energy, water, chemical inputs. We can produce new fibers from the old ones with fewer resources and thereby reduce carbon emissions and reduce water pollution. It's also a means of encouraging responsible consumption. If you just think like consciously, I would like to use more recycled yarn, therefore I'm buying less into all of the new, what do you call it, like collecting type of mania, which I'm a little bit guilty of myself. Promoting a culture of reuse, of mindfulness, and conscious crafting within community. So hopefully my little yarn shop in the novels can be kind of like a role model, And some of these, like producing this kind of yarn, it involves smaller batch, slow fashion thinking, fewer impulse buys might result from that, and more thoughtful projects. So like when I use this yarn, I'm going to use it carefully. I'm still thinking, if you have this kind of sorry leftover yarn, like recycled yarn, and I would love to know what you've used it for. That would be really interesting. Another advantage is just the affordability. So arguably, if yarn has been recycled, like the material was already there and we're just sort of remaking it, then the price should be lower. So it should make the craft more accessible. A lot of people complain about how expensive good yarn is, and I can understand why. That's why, a lot of the yarn I have, certainly when I've traveled, I have forked over money for yarn as kind of like a gift to myself and that kind of thing. But a lot of my yarn, probably at least 2/3 of it, is either thrifted or was gifted, or maybe traded, So that is a definite advantage. I think somebody was asking me the other day, where can I buy this? Where can I get a hold of good yarn affordably? And if you look for the recycled yarn, that is maybe an option to consider. Can also strengthen local economies. So if we have swaps, there are resale platforms. I know on Facebook, I've seen like D-Stash and Ravelry and that kind of thing. And it can enhance the profile of small scale sellers. When I was looking into like, where could you find recycled yarn? And actually Etsy is a good option. So I know there are like complaints about Etsy and the way they go about their business model and the money that they squirrel away and this kind of thing. But there are a lot of makers on there who are small scale sellers who could use the support. And that might be just a good resource to find recycled yarn. Can also enhance creative freedom, because if you're like deliberately looking for recycled yarn, it's going to be a limited selection. So you may have to put on your thinking cap about, well, how can I use this yarn? I don't have a problem using this yarn. That's a no-brainer. How am I going to use cashmere, though it's softest, maybe a scarf, whatever. But this, it's a bit on the rough side. It's, very unique color. And I'm going to have to be creative about what use I put that to. So those are some of the benefits. And I think, it's not like recycled yarn is a cure-all or the be-all and end-all of sustainability. There are a lot of other components that go into it. There are maybe some issues with how recycled yarn is made. The result, like the outcome of the yarn that you get, that you purchase may or may not be the same quality that, what you want as far as making a garment like this, for example, that's going to last for decades, arguably, and not wear out and be, washable, like hand washable, have, all those really great properties that we want from our wool. It's antibacterial and it can take moisture and all that stuff. So we want our yarn to help us produce garments that we're going to love, and that we don't want to like make something and just chuck it because, so that's something that you probably want to watch out for when you buy recycled yarn, is to make sure the quality is there that you would enjoy, because some of them can have like shorter fibers, or they could pill, they could be kind of irregular, like texturally. I'm thinking about this. I'm like, I don't know. Do I want it against my skin? Like, what's going to happen when I wash it? I don't know. And again, boy, if tell me. A hat might be perfect for this, because then it's just on my hair. If the yarn has been aged or it's overwashed, it can become brittle. It may not have any elasticity anymore. And there's the potential for abuse. Like sometimes the labeling on the yarn may or may not be proper, depending on who, where it's coming from. It can be also a challenge to identify, like, what really are the fiber types that this was made from, or what really is the gauge, or what about the dye? We don't, like, how do you know what the quality of the dye was that went into it. Is it going to be color fast or not, there might be issues with allergies. So if you don't like really know exactly what the content is, what if you're allergic to this or that? A friend of mine was, I was reading at the writer's workshop the other night, and I mentioned acrylic yarn, and she wrote back that she was triggered because she was allergic to acrylic yarn. What if the fibers get mixed, right? That could be, and then you don't know, the label may or may not be clear. So it's important to, when you're buying this kind of yarn, to really kind of study and make sure you're getting what you think you are and what you pay for. There's also a limited supply. It does seem like there's more and more recycled yarn out there. I went and I looked online. I was like, where can you find this? And what are the ingredients? Who's making it? You've got companies like Lion Brand and Barocco, and they're very well established. And there's probably, more and more of this yarn available, but to the extent that it's limited, it may be a trick to, get all the yarn that you need in a certain dial-up for a certain project, or to like match it. If you're trying to source for a specific type of yarn, a specific color, then the quantity can be kind of unreliable. So that's something else to keep in mind. It's also a good reason to like just encourage this, right? To encourage people to produce recycled yarn, go out there and buy what they have, and then hopefully the supply will improve. There could be an environmental cost to recycling yarn. Some industrial recycling processes can still involve chemicals, water, and energy, especially if it's synthetic or blended yarn. So that's something to be aware of. It's like there are better and worse recycled yarns, and arguably the ones that are probably wool are possibly better than the ones that involve like acrylic or any kind of petroleum type product. Also, where are we buying this from? Like, how far is this yarn coming away from? Transport costs, packaging, that can offset some of the ecological gains if it's not locally sourced. Especially when if you look at packaging, right? If we're using plastic to package recycled wool yarn, it's like, how much have we gained there, So another thing to watch out is the potential for greenwashing. So some companies can market yarn as recycled, but like here, it says it doesn't really specify how much has been recycled. So I might have to, I'm not going to accuse this company of greenwashing, but it just says a mix of new and recycled unused cashmere. It doesn't say like how much. So for all I know, it's 1% recycled. I don't know, right? And it's not like they're making a false claim on there, but it could happen, right? Greenwashing is a thing. So as far as best practices, so if you really want to incorporate sustainability into your practice as a fiber crafter, there's some suggestions that are worth keeping in mind. If you can support local fiber recycling initiatives or local yarn co-ops, that's probably a good thing. Buy local. I think it applies here too. It applies in, I think, any kind of purchasing, to my mind. I had one person ask me the other day about, why do you buy all those boots? And I'm like, well, yeah, I do have a lot of boots, but they are a good example of buying local, because all the boots that I have, with like 2 exceptions, were made here, right here in America. In fact, most of the leather was made in America. Buying local, supporting local industries, especially if they're good local industries, I think is a good thing. It's like using your consumer power and your money to support the things that align with your values. If you buy from transparent producers who disclose their recycling process and the origin of the fiber, that's also a big help. Like, again, here it just says right on the label for the escape art, it says cashmere products recycled from the Italian textile industry. So that gives me an idea. Now, do I know the original origin of the fiber? No, it's probably China. But at least I'm getting some kind of a clue of where the original, where the cashmere, the found object cashmere was when it was recycled. Also, natural fibers are obviously better. Biodegradable yarns are better, because recycling is, if you're recycling a petroleum product, yes, it's good to keep out of the landfill, but at some point it's going to end up there anyhow. So sometimes we just have to have acrylic. I have a lot of sock yarn with nylon in it. I'm not proud of it. I would like to get away from that. So I've told you this is 25% nylon, just saying. But to the extent that we can avoid any purchase of petroleum product fiber it's a good thing. So we can favor natural fibers, and they're also just with our own personal, like use your stash yarn. I don't throw anything away like I showed you. Use your stash yarn creatively, swap with other crafters, donate. You can donate unused yarn, or you can make things and donate the things that you made. Because for a lot of us, knitting is almost kind of like a necessity. It's like keeping our sanity, especially these days. So we may end up knitting more hats than we need. We may knit more scarves than we need, but we can still enjoy it if we have a place to deposit whatever, either the yarn or what we make of it. And it could just be your family, right? It could be your grandchildren, it could be your cousin, it could be, someone from your work circle. I mean, there are a lot of people who might want what we make if we already have enough of what we made. And I'm reaching that point with some of the stuff that I've been making. I've been knitting now for about 6 or 7 years. Here's a trick. Learn to identify fiber by feel if the labeling is unclear. And I've also seen like the fire test, so if it melts, it's plastic. If it doesn't, if it like resists burning, it's wool. But yeah, and that's something that my blind character could probably do. I should think about that. Learn to identify fibers by feel. That's a really useful strategy. Prioritize durability, kind of like what I was saying about the shorter fibers. This yarn, this is Lopi. It's going to last forever. I have no idea how old the yarn was when I found it. I'm sure it was decades old, especially coming from that, Reynolds brand. It's been a while since the Reynolds company marketed the Lopi. Now they just do it themselves. But if you prioritize durability, long-lasting projects, it's also a good way to reduce overall consumption. So yeah, I think recycled yarn is a great, it's like a part of your toolkit, and there are just a lot of things to keep in mind. One of them is like how it's recycled. So there are basically 2, maybe 3 ways. There's mechanical recycling. This is like a low-tech method, and it works best for natural fibers. The fibers are sorted. Usually they're supposed to be to avoid having to re-dye it. So to the extent that you can, match green with green or blue with blue, that's a really good idea. And one of the things I learned about is something that's called garneting. It's where old textiles are shredded back into fiber. This is something I know very little about, but I think it might pertain to this sari production. I'm not positive about that, but if you know something about garneting that I don't, I would love for you to share it. This is something I would love to learn more about. Carding and spinning. Loose fiber can be carded and spun into new yarn, so that's something that I could probably apply to, all of the yarn ends that I have in this tin. I can card it and respin it. I've seen Jillian Eve model that. Also, mechanical processes can blend virgin fibers like wool, cotton to restore the strength and structure. So a lot of times we're talking about wool. In this, like cotton, you can use denim scraps, which is kind of interesting. I have seen yarn that's made of denim. If you've knit with that or crocheted, I'd be really curious what your experience is. So it can be energy efficient. Sometimes dyeing can be avoided, which is good. But it can also possibly shorten and weaken the fibers, which may have an impact on the quality and cause, pilling and breakage and stuff like that. So, and I suppose, there are ways that you could like hold that yarn double with some other kind of yarn to obviate that issue. So then the second process for recycling is called chemical recycling, and that involves breaking fibers down at the molecular level and reconstituting them. There's like depolymerization, which breaks polymers down into base chemicals, and a purification process can remove the dye. And then you're going to repolymerize and rebuild the polymer into new fibers and extrude those and spin them into yarn. So this would work, for example, if you make polyester from bottles, from plastic bottles. And I've seen yarn marketed as being that specific product. I've even seen shoes that are made from recycled bottles. Could also work for cellulose-based fibers like rayon, viscose, modal, stuff like that. That process can maintain the fiber quality. And you can see our dog, he's so skinny. We just found out that he has lymphoma. So that's kind of unfortunate. This is Benny. A lot of you recognize him. He's been a super sick boy lately, but I got him on steroids now, and hopefully you'll eat tonight. Are you going to eat tonight, buddy? Huh? I hope so. But he kind of looks like he should be in that Jira picture of Death on a Horse. I'm like, man, dude, you got... But he's he's still with us. I'm glad he's still with us. So anyhow, another advantage of this is you can actually, by doing this particular process, the chemical process, you can produce yarn that's almost identical to the original product, and works for blended fabrics apparently. But obviously, it's a really industrial process, so it's energy intensive. It does cost money, requires industrial facilities, and so I'm not sure if it's like the ideal answer to recycling yarn. But then another method, which I think I could probably identify with more, is upcycling or hand recycling. And I personally have not done this. I know some of you have. Take an old sweater that you find, maybe it's one that your kid grew out of, or you find one at the thrift shop, and you unravel it. I like to watch, are you all familiar with Veteran Knitter? He'll like get out his saw and stuff like that and convert it into a circular motion type tool to unravel a sweater in like 2 seconds. It's just really crazy. I love how he's turned it into this kind of theater. But yeah, you can unravel a sweater and you can reuse the yarn. You can splice yarn. That can be done with like hand spinning in concert with that. You can re-dye and over-dye yarn to kind of refresh it and make it like renew it, And this can be something you find in like thrift store sweaters. And it can also be like a kind of an artistic endeavor, an artistic process. It's very low cost, involves a lot of creativity, which is great, helps keep materials out of a landfill, and gives you a little more personal control over your choice. But it's kind of a labor intensive. So, hopefully you would just enjoy doing that, because you're probably not going to, do it for money. That, I wouldn't ask that of anyone. Oh, can you just, tear the sweater up and re-dye it for me and I'll give you $20. No. Also, it's going to be small scale, but that could be an advantage, because I'm guilty of overdoing it on the yarn purchases and then dreading. It's like, man, I've got to knit all that yarn. So it's it's a good thing. Sometimes I even look on buying expensive yarn as a good thing, because it's like only so much I can afford, only so much I can recycle, only so much that I can make. And then you can recycle blended yarns, like mixed cotton and polyester. You can put recycled fiber and mix it in with like recycled cotton mixed with polyester, recycled wool mixed with nylon. So that's like a fourth process for doing that. Now, as far as if it's me and I'm like asking myself, really, what's the best thing that I can do as a knitter to contribute to the sustainability of my craft? There are a lot of things to keep in mind about that. Partly, like what is it that you are trying to get out of your crafting? What kinds of things do you make? What kinds of materials do you like to work with? I think probably the whole hand reclaiming is maybe the most direct method to go with. And like for me, so just for me as an example, I have all these yarn ends that I could creatively seek a way to recycle. And then I have my son's dog fur. He just went out again. He's like, my dog's going to blow his coat. And I'm like, okay, here's a bag. Save me the fiber. And, arguably his dog's fur could go out into the environment, no problem. But I can sort of lengthen the life of the wool that I have by adding the dog fur into it. And it's like a really personalized way of making a kind of a yarn and a fiber that I'll remember. I'll be like, yeah, that's my son's dog, I have heard people say, oh, you'll never get rid of the smell, but I kind of like a dog smell, so I don't really mind. I think, yeah, to the extent that we use the materials that are like really close to us and invest our own personal labor, it might be a more meaningful way of recycling yarn. And it's also a way that probably has just the tiniest of carbon footprints. All I have to worry about is the money I'm paying to air condition my house in the warm weather if I want to sit inside and work with my fiber. It's also a good way of diverting waste, so instead of throwing all these scraps in the landfill, right, I can figure out a way to recycle them. There's no packaging involved, no packaging, right? I don't have to take it anywhere. And we have a Goodwill store up the street. So if I wanted to like recycle old sweaters, I could just go up there and buy them, or even look in my own closet. So some benefits of this are encouraging slow fashion, encouraging thoughtfulness and mindfulness about our crafting. And another, I think, outcome of this, and this is something that I'm gaining from writing about the yarn industry in my novel, is just greater awareness of textile quality, textile construction, and the way that fibers behave. And I think the more you know about that kind of thing, the more able you are to make garments that, again, are going to last because they're going to be loved and they're going to be well made. And it's just one more way to contribute to slow fashion, which is something that I really prize and I really emphasize. Not perfectly, right? But I'm learning more and more, and every day I'm trying to be a better aficionado, a better role model for that kind of thing. And please do chime in with the things that you know that I don't. And if I misstated anything, I think to the extent that we can reduce our dependence on newly produced yarns, we're doing the world a favor. You know, our climate is really suffering right now. Wildlife is really suffering. Trees are really suffering. When I think of how many trees burn up every year, I mean, we get the smoke that comes down from Canada because every year it just seems like their forests are on fire. And I know it happens in South America too. It's happening in southern Eastern Europe and Turkey. And it just, it makes me want to cry. So I think any little thing that I can do to improve the situation, I want to try to do. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I hope y'all have a great weekend and wish Benny luck. At least we know what's wrong with him now. For a while, we were just kind of lost. It took us a month to even just find out what's up with him. But yeah, he's still here. Aren't you, bud? Poor baby. So y'all take care, enjoy your knitting, and again, chime in with your information, with your wisdom about recycling and sustainability, and anything you think I ought to know in advance of, publishing novels with a yarn store manager who prizes sustainability, because I want her to be a real role model in this area and to really know her stuff. So everybody take care, and we'll talk soon. Ciao.